My fellow Americans, today our armed forces joined our NATO allies in airstrikes against Serbian forces responsible for the brutality in Kosovo. We have acted with resolve for several reasons. We act to protect thousands of innocent people in Kosovo from a mounting military offensive. We act to prevent a wider war, to defuse a powder keg at the heart of Europe that has exploded twice before in this century with catastrophic results. And we act to stand united with our allies for peace. By acting now, we are upholding our values, protecting our interests, and advancing the cause of peace.
There was a two-decade-long effort of, let's call it, colonial domination of the Albanian minority there, repressing them, preventing them from using their language, kicking ethnic Albanians out of positions in the university, positions in hospitals, positions in the government services. It was an exercise of repression, and the Kosovar Albanians stood up for their rights like people would anywhere.
The United Nations Commission for Human Rights recorded their first external refugee on March the 28th, 3 days after the air war started.
To protect their own pilots from casualties, NATO bombing took place at high speeds and high altitudes. This politically motivated strategy posed little threat to the Yugoslav military, but NATO bombs dropped from high altitudes would kill hundreds of civilians, including Albanian refugees in Đakovica and Korisha. At first, the U.S. Department of Defense tried to blame the Serbs, but reporters on the scene found cluster bomb fragments with British markings. The claim that NATO was targeting only military facilities was one of many falsehoods that were used to build public support for the bombing campaign.
They ran out of military targets within the first couple of weeks. And I mean, this is now common knowledge that NATO indeed expanded their targets to stage 3, which was civilian targets.
NATO bombs and missiles struck the foundations of the country's economy, destroying petroleum refineries and chemical and heating plants. These attacks left a trail of environmental devastation. The use of cluster bombs dropped from high altitudes in civilian areas had devastating consequences in population centers such as Niš in southern Serbia and Pristina, the capital of Kosovo.
I mean, I know there was a proliferation of cluster bombs used against Pristina, and there was all kinds of these empty casings that showed still clearly the American markings.
Scores of schools, hospitals, and apartment buildings were hit in what NATO described as accidents of war, but which were the predictable result of NATO's strategy of high-altitude bombing. Military experts say the methodic destruction by NATO bombs of a full passenger train clearly crossed the line between legal and illegal warfare.
The pilot had hit the wiring, which had immobilized the train, so it was a sitting duck, made a second pass, and it deliberately attacked the jammed passenger cars and basically murdered unarmed people. They weren't just targeting his military targets. When they're starting to take out police buildings in Belgrade, Foreign Affairs Ministry in Belgrade, TV stations.
16 people were killed when the Radio and TV Serbia television station was struck by NATO cruise missiles.
They killed several technicians and cameramen and a makeup artist. Her hands were found over 100 yards away in a park. 2 people there, and this was late at night, were vaporized. None of their remains have ever been found.
A variety of reasons were given for destroying the civilian target, but NATO officials were clearly concerned when Radio and Television Serbia permitted international news media, such as CNN and CBS.
It will help to deter future war crimes by establishing that those who give orders will be held accountable.
Would NATO leaders also be held accountable for violations of international law? Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights charged that NATO bombing had violated international law.
Faleminderit zotrin Recep, ndërsa në vazhdim ftojmë edhe zyrtarisht që ta bëjmë zbulimin e përmendorës shtatorës së ish presidentit amerikan Bill Clinton. Ftoj njeriun që I ka dalur në ndihmë gjithmonë vendit ton, presidenti Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Ju faleminderit. Thank you. Ju faleminderit. First of all, I am profoundly grateful that I had a chance to be a part of ending the horrible things that were happening to you 10 years ago and giving you a chance to build a better future for yourselves.
Së pari, unë jam shumë I nderuar që kam qenë këtu për ta ndalur ato gjëra të tmerrshme që ndodhishin juve dhe për të qenë pjesë e atyre gjërave që po ndodhin këtu.
But I am well aware that there were many others involved in the decisions that saved so many lives in Kosovo and gave you a chance to build a free democracy.
Unë jam shumë I vetëdijshëm që ka pasur edhe shumë të tjerë që kanë ndërmuar për shpëtimin e shumë jetave në Kosovë dhe që ju ndihmuan juve për të ndërtuar demokraci.
I want to thank the people in our armed services in the United States and our NATO allies.
Unë dua të falenderoj ushtarët e Shteteve të Amerikës dhe po ashtu ata të NATO-s.
I want to thank
dua të falenderoj
Madeleine Albright and Richard Holbrooke and General Wes Clark.
Zotrin Holbrooke dhe zotrin Wesley Clark.
All the people in our diplomatic corps.
Të gjitha njerëz në korpin ton diplomatik.
And I want to thank
dhe unë dua të falenderoj
President Bush and Secretary of State Condi Rice for continuing to support Kosovo as you move toward your independence.
Dua të falenderoj presidentin Bush dhe sekretaren Condoleezza Rice që vazhduan të ndihmojnë Kosovën drejt pavarësisë suaj.
And I want to assure you
dhe dua t'ju siguroj
that President Obama, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the entire American people are with you today and they will be with you into the future as you build a better tomorrow.
D'ailleurs, on a créé aussi le mythe suivant, la Serbie, l'armée serbe est en train d'investir Sarajevo. Et il faut absolument faire quelque chose contre cet investissement. La ville de Sarajevo est maintenant un siège qui est mené par les Serbes, ce qui était faux, car je peux en témoigner, j'y suis allé. Et j'ai été reçu dans Sarajevo par le maire de la partie serbe de la ville, qui m'a offert un déjeuner, car il y avait, la ville était divisée en deux, une partie était occupée par les bosniaques musulmans, une autre partie était occupée par les Serbes, et il y avait des échanges de coups des deux côtés. Il n'y avait donc pas un encerclement de la ville par les Serbes, qui a été une invention qui est perpétuée encore maintenant, parce que quand on lance une série de mensonges, ça reste. Et ensuite, il y a eu plus tard l'histoire du massacre, du faux massacre de Račak, en prétendant que ce sont les Serbes qui avaient pressé, alors que ce n'était pas vrai, mais ça donnait un prétexte pour commencer les bombardements, passer à l'action, bombarder par la voie des airs ce malheureux pays, y compris la population civile, utiliser des armes à uranium appauvri pour sans tenir compte des conséquences ultérieures de cette opération appauvrie, sans tenir compte des conséquences ultérieures de cette opération appauvrie, sans tenir compte des conséquences ultérieures de cette opération. Bref, faire de ce peuple un peuple martyr. Et tout ça a été conduit dans les règles. D'abord, premièrement, on traite extrêmement mal en accusant le peuple de tous les méfaits. Deuxièmement, on lui crée un blocus économique pour affaiblir sa volonté de résistance. C'est ce qui s'est passé. Ensuite, on le bombarde de manière à ce qu'il ne puisse pas récupérer économiquement en détruisant son appareil économique. Enfin, on l'occupe, comme on a voulu le faire après les accords de Rambouillet, totalement. Et une fois sur place, on profite de la misère dans laquelle ce peuple a été plongé pour exiger qu'il nomme des dirigeants favorables à la cause des agresseurs. Et le système comprenant 4 parties qui ont été exécutées sciemment, intelligemment, les unes après les autres, et dont une partie a été utilisée plus tard en Irak. Donc on peut dire aussi que l'affaire des Balkans a été pour les Américains une leçon, entre guillemets, de stratégie pour les affaires irakiennes. Ça s'est terminé en Irak avec les bombardements que vous savez, les excès que vous savez, les tortures, Abu Ghraib et la prison avec les mauvais traitements,